As I stated earlier, everybody likes to hear about the science, again, the mechanics of it, but the consumer just wants to know it works. So as I go through and explain these components of the science, I'm going to teach you some power statements that will matter, okay? Or that will help the consumer get it. In the early years of OsteoStrong, I personally struggled with how to explain what it is we do in a way that people would get it. And I am guilty of geeking out so much on the science that we lost sales and we had a hard time getting traction in the beginning because you're trying to create a new industry, there's a lot of headwind, you know this is important, you know it's going to change people's lives, but how do you get people to understand what it is and want to take an action? And by action, I mean getting out their credit card and buying it and staying engaged. And so I am one of these people that I'm always focusing on what is the point at which a person makes a decision. What can I say to get them there? So as I go through the science, I will try to help you understand the nuanced little phrases that get the consumer to go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And so it's important to know all this. I don't want you to get so focused on the science that you lose sight of what the consumer really wants, right? What do they want? It's not what we want. Tony Robbins has this saying that he teaches at Business Mastery, fall more in love with your customer than you do with your product or service. And when I go into the science, I risk getting you to fall more in love with that than the person that's in front of you in your center. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. Some of these screens I talk about when I do a discovery call, okay? And I will explain it very similarly in the way that I do then and there, but I'm going to stop and hesitate when I think it matters to the member, okay? And so let's track here. Dr. Jason Deere, the lead researcher of a project in 2015 in Bristol, United Kingdom, came up with a study to determine what I'm about to teach you here, which is how much pressure does it take to trigger the osteogenic effect inside of the human body. And what does that mean? That simply means the force needed to cause your central nervous system to tell your body to start making bone. Because since the 1890s, we have known as a society that pressure builds bone. In fact, Dr. Julius Wolff was the guy that came up with this. He was a German doctor who did this study, and I don't know how he did it, but it was before human ethics boards, so he probably, he was German. We don't know what he did, but Michael understands, But anyway, we were thankful because he ended up coming up with this concept, and we call it Wolff's Law. It's still taught in medical schools today. Chiropractors learn about it. And it's this concept of, hey, you put enough pressure on the human body, it responds by making more bone. But what we never knew was what is the minimum dose response. It's an important term. Minimum dose response, the minimum amount of pressure needed to trigger this effect. And so what was believed for so long since Dr. Julius Wolff created Wolff's Law is that, hey, any amount of pressure is going to build bone. Take a walk, pick up some weights, do a little run, and you're going to do this. Like, even to this day, you will hear people talk about, osteoporosis experts. My gosh, the world's full of them, right? They write books and there's this kind of thing. They say Vibe plates build bone. I get on the Vibe plate, I'm building bone. Bull crap. You aren't building bone when you get on a Vibe plate. You aren't building bone when you go for a run. You aren't building bone when you lift weights. There's a belief that is systemic and taught throughout our culture, and it does not work. And why do we know? Well, we know this because of the study here, but Dr. Jason Deere did. And Dr. Jason Deere figured out that his goal was like, what is that minimum dose response? So what he did was he went and got over 1,000 people, and he had them jump off of various heights. But before they jumped, he attached an accelerometer to their hips so that when they impacted the ground, he would take their body weight and he would express it in terms of how many multiples of body weight of pressure were they able to generate when they hit the ground. So if I'm not going to jump because I hurt my toe the other day, I'll jump a little bit. So if I do that, all right, I'm doing more than 1 times my body weight. So I did that. All right, maybe I did 1.1 or 1.2, a little bit, right? And so what he did was every time people would jump off various heights, he would express the amount of force that they created in terms of multiples of their body weight, and then they would wait a short period of time and do a blood test. That blood test I talked about yesterday, remember those two blood tests? Does anybody remember the two names of the blood tests? P1NP and the CTX. You would do those because shortly after an osteogenic event where you're creating pressure, creating that impact, you can see the result of that expressed in a blood test. And so that's what you get. Like, how much pressure? You jump off this thing, wait a little while, do a blood test. Nope, that wasn't it. You jump off this thing, maybe a little bit more force, do a blood test to see what happens. See what happens. That over 1,000 people jumping off various heights, taking blood tests, you determined that you couldn't trigger osteogenic response, building of new bone, unless you hit a minimum of 4.2 multiples of your body weight of pressure on that impact. It just didn't happen. In fact, it was like the boiling point of water. Write that down. It was like the boiling point of water. Well, water doesn't boil until it hits a certain temperature. Until then, nothing happened. But as soon as you hit the boiling point, now it starts to boil, right? The human body is the same way as it relates to osteogenic response, which is until you hit that number, ain't nothing happening. So the idea that lifting weights, jogging, standing on a vibe plate, blah, 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 doing yoga or Pilates or any of the other crap that people are teaching out there in society that builds bone is a fallacy. We are going to destroy that fallacy, and we are going to help people actually start getting results because we care. And so we want to help people. And so when people come in like, well, you know, I've been walking, my doctor said if I start lifting weights, I'm gonna start building bone. No judgment. I love you. I think it's great that you're going to start lifting weights. That's good for your body. There's all kinds of benefits that happen from exercise. But I want to help you. And in order to help you, I need to help you understand, which is you can't build bone doing those activities. That will not trigger osteogenesis. You need to experience a minimum of 4.2 multiples of your body weight. And while that sounds like a lot of pressure, so I'm like, okay, well, I weigh this much times 4, that's a lot of force. Wait a second, now I weigh, I don't know what it is in kilos, you guys think in terms of kilos, but I weigh about 173 pounds, probably 174 once I leave Portugal, because I'm only eating. And if I multiply that times 4.2, I can't bench press. Who's a Victor? You could bench press that much because you're a stud, but I can't. And so I'm like, oh, that's just impractical for a human being, especially somebody who's concerned.
I just want to shoot in. If you would take 4.2 multiples of body weight in squats,
yes,
it would be a world record.
Yes, thank you for that. So what he stated there is like, if you could do 4.2 multiples of your body weight in a squat, you would be a world record holder in squats. It is freaking hard to do. It would kill you if you tried to get underneath you mass that much force. It's not practical. Now, people will sometimes challenge you, especially if you're giving a presentation like this in front of a group, and you will be. This presentation is available to you, or versions of it are out there. People say, well, can't I just do this at home? Couldn't I just push on a wall? And I was like, absolutely. I don't own the science, and if you can figure out a way to do this at home and you're comfortable doing it, high five. Don't have a problem with you doing that. I don't try to get defensive when people attack me. In fact, when they do, I acknowledge it. And if I tell you, you can build superhuman bone strength, get a lot stronger, eliminate joint and back pain, get better posture, improve your balance, all these things, and I told you, yeah, you know, it's about 60 seconds of effort one day a week. If your response is not, that's crap, then there's something wrong with you, because it sounds like crap. And so thank you for feeling that way. Thank you for being willing to step into confrontation with me and challenge me, because you know what? I felt the same way. All right? But once I experienced it for myself, I found that the results to be true and accurate. And now that I've seen it happen with tens of thousands of other people, and I've seen the science that supports it, I am an evangelical sharer of this message to everybody. So thank you for asking that question, because you're just like me. You didn't believe it too. Don't ever get defensive when someone challenges you, OsteoStrong or otherwise. Always acknowledge it. Yeah, that's reasonable.
If you have somebody that you need to be careful with how you word things, and they ask, why don't they know this? Like, why don't I know the 4.2 research? Because they're, because they trust the
Good question.
doctor.
Why don't we know? Why don't we know anything? Okay. Why do we know some things so well and other things not at all? Because there's usually a money motivation behind it. Okay. If the world wants you to buy an idea, a product, a service, some new government program, some movement, there's always money behind that movement teaching you. There's not money behind osteogenic loading because there's no pharmaceutical pill for it. Okay, it's a physical medicine. You don't see physical medicine promoted as a solution for anything because no one can make really any money off of it. Not in terms of like the big money that pharma does, and I'm not judging pharma. There are good things that I would not be alive today if it wasn't for pharma. Because I got pneumonia 4 times as a kid, and I needed antibiotics, penicillin, whatever my parents had to do. I was a little kid, and I just kept getting pneumonia because I wouldn't listen. I keep going out and playing and doing. I was a kid, right? And a boy. So 4.2 multiples body weight. Now, Francisco asked me a question earlier. He's like, hey, I get a picture of the gymnast doing the same, right? So when John Jaquish went out there and started putting together these devices, one of the inspiration for it was that his mother had osteoporosis. But when he was doing the research, he found that it was gymnasts are the ones who have the superhuman bone. Now, gymnast is not going to work out as hard as any other athlete or Victor or anybody else. Every athlete at the professional or semi-professional level is working their ass off to get the result, to break through their barriers, to beat the next person on the pitch, right? They all want to do it and they all try really hard. So to say that a gymnast just works out harder than everybody else, that's not true. All the athletes are working out really hard. But why are gymnasts getting the strong bones? Pound for pound, they're the strongest athletes in the world on average. Strongest bones, strongest muscles. They could do amazing things. They're graceful and beautiful to watch. A gymnast do their thing, but so is a professional basketball player, so is a professional rugby player or soccer player. They're poetry in motion. They're all trying hard. But the gymnast has superhuman bone simply because impact. When they strike the ground, they are getting many multiples of their body weight. They're doing it for about 1/100th of a second. 1/100th of a second. How long do we do sessions? Well, maybe do 10-15 seconds on each machine. Times 4, about a minute, let's say. You're doing hundreds of times more force on your body when you do that machine than even the gymnast does in their daily routines. And as a result, gymnasts end up developing superhuman bone. But let's face it, impact is pretty hard on your joints. I experienced a little impact on my big toe. And it can be hard on your joints. Everybody who's done sports knows injury happens through impact and things. You did that to me. I also stole the ball from you once. I could die tomorrow. I stole the ball from Jonas. Did y'all hear that?
I saw it.
Jimmy saw it. Jimmy got a picture of it.
No, Tammy got a picture.
I'll post it.
Love you. So, what was I talking about? Does anything else matter? What's that? Yeah, so joints. Impact is really hard on the joints, right? And so, in fact, as great as gymnasts are, on average, they retire at the ripe old age of 19 years old. In fact, gymnasts also have a high incidence of hip and knee replacement surgeries. So we know impact is a negative side effect of doing sports. As good as it is for your body to run around and do all the things and lift the weights and blah, 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 there is always a negative side effect, and impact is one of those things that is causing wear and tear on your joints. So the challenge was, how do we develop this level of force that emulates impact, gives you the force that your body needs to trigger osteogenic effect without the impact. If we can accomplish that, then we've essentially achieved what I would call the holy grail of musculoskeletal development never before seen in the world. Boom. This was an app that Dr. Jaquish created called Fracture Proof. It's on the iPhone. You can download it for $2.99 to try this out yourself. Or if you're satisfied, I can tell you about my experience with it. The reason why Jaquish created this app was just to help people understand how flippin' hard it is to create the levels of impact that you need to generate this effect. So it utilizes the accelerometer in your phone. You got the accelerometer in your phone. That's why you can sense movement and do all the things, right? And so if you just download this app, hold it next to your hip really securely, and start jumping off various levels. You don't want the phone to do this when you're doing. You want it to stay exactly still against your body, and then jump, and then you enter your weight, and it will tell you how many multiples of body weight that you just generated. And so that's what I did. I went around, and I've got this, you've seen on Discovery Call, that's my basement man cave office. It's really cool. And I've got a concrete floor in there. And so I started jumping off various levels. First, I just held it and I jumped on the ground. Bam, 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 bam. Well, I couldn't do it. And it kind of hurts, right? It's concrete floor, I'm barefoot, to get maximum impact force. And I'm trying to do it. Then I got up on a chair and I jumped off, and I think I either hit it or just hit it, but I was able to achieve it. And it hurt a little bit. And I'm like, okay, let's see whether or not if I jump off a higher level, I can achieve that level of force. So then I climbed up on the counter, it was about this high, and then I jumped off the counter onto the ground. And the amount of impact that I got when I jumped off the higher level, can anybody tell me it was higher or lower?
Less.
What's that? Lower. Why? What's that? I was higher. How can the impact be lower?
Because you need flex to protect you.
That's right, because my central nervous said, hey, idiot, this is going to hurt. And I flex, just like the shock absorbers in your car will help you protect from a bumpy road and all this kind of thing. Your hips and your knees do the same thing. So when I hit the ground, I shocked, absorbed, and I didn't create as much force, even though I had gotten higher. All right? And so I was jumping up and down, and these were actual results from one time that I did this. This was a recent one. You can see this red line here represented this. This one down here was actually, you could manually enter an amount, and that was from an OsteoStrong session. So this was easy and not painful. This was hard and painful. Well, it wasn't that hard. Let's be honest, it's not hard to jump off of something. It's only hard when you hit the ground, right? And so that was the purpose of that, was to demonstrate how difficult it is. Now, to that one person said, couldn't I just go stand between two walls and try to sit home? I was like, absolutely, you can do that. But I encourage you to try, but I have one warning for you. This truly happened to me because somebody asked me to do it, so I got between two walls and I went to go do a leg press, and I pushed the wall off of the studs. It actually broke the wall. Now, you're able to generate a lot of force when you do that. In fact, when we were designing the leg press that Jimmy's sitting on over there, the lower GT, the manufacturer didn't understand what we were trying to do. In fact, the place that we manufacture these devices builds high-performance gym equipment for athletes. And the guy that owns the gym, he's bigger than Victor. He's this big bodybuilder guy and with an ego to match. And so he says, why are you putting all this steel in there? And he kept arguing with our design, Jaquish and I. So he says, I did it better. I did it more efficient. And we're like, okay, no problem. So Jaquish and I went to the thing, and he had it sitting there. Just that was the very first prototype that we built of the Spectrum equipment. And I said, okay, and this guy's huge, bigger, twice my size, all muscle. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not that big of a guy. I said, let me see how your design worked. And I sat down on the machine, watch this. When people in the southern United States are about to demonstrate some capability, they'll say, hold my beer. Here, hold my beer, I got this. So I sat down on the machine, I started pushing and just started breaking all the welds on this machine. Because I'm able to do 20 times my body weight on that thing or more. So 30, I don't know, a lot. And he was like, oh my God, and then he saw, right? Then it was like, bing, he's like, oh my gosh, I understand now. Before he didn't get it because he's lifting weights. So he's used to, you know what, how many, a few hundred pounds? I mean, that you may be on a leg press, 500-600 pounds. Like, what's the maximum amount of weight that people are going to be doing this? You're designing this to handle thousands of pounds. That's ridiculous. Well, we need it to because you get Victor kind of guys on there who will destroy your equipment. Pretty hard. Now, to your question, Francisco asked, he's like, I really want a picture of a gymnast impacting the ground so that I can describe to people what it is that they do. This does that very well. So what's going on here? Right here, you have a woman by the name of Lisa. She's in her mid-60s, and she's on the lower GT. Did you want to add something? Did you bring it up? Look by my mother?
Very similar clothes. You're doing decisions. I thought it's my mom's.
Oh, it's your mom. We got a hidden camera. All right, so this is the old user interface of our equipment, and on this top one here, she's just sitting there chilling out, and she's imposing about 113 pounds of force, which was about her body weight. But she's just hanging out here, and as you know, the leg plate doesn't move and the back doesn't move once it's locked into position. Once you get them into a position where they can simulate high impact load and their joints are designed to take it. This lower one here, she is now imposing force. She's doing the 65-year-old woman. She's imposing over 1,000 pounds of force through her lower extremities. 65 years old, 1,000 pounds of force. But as you look here and here, this is the foot plate and the back isn't moving. But look, her knee is lower. Isn't that weird? If the foot plate and the seat aren't moving, why would her knee drop? Anybody? The bones and joints are compressing. She's actually compressing and bending her bone as she does that. Gosh, that sounds painful and scary. It does sound painful and scary, and if that's your response, you're human. Thank you for playing. However, she's smiling. I was there when this picture was taken, and we were having a conversation. She was in no pain. She didn't break a sweat. She didn't get fatigued, and she wasn't sore the next day. But this woman can now do over 1,000 pounds of force through her lower extremities. Not even trying her hard, she was just doing it for the picture, right? That's amazing. That is truly extraordinary. In the history of the world, there's been nothing that's been designed that allows human beings to consistently do that safely. In the history of the planet, we are pioneers breaking through a paradigm of human physical development that has never been done before in the history of mankind. Isn't that amazing? Congratulations, welcome to awesomeness. All right. So you've seen this one. Thank you to this man right here, Basil Hunt. He is the cat that did this study. All right? It was my idea to put it in a graph like this because I'm like, okay, studies are great and they're confusing and who wants to read that? I mean, I like to read them, but most people aren't going to read them. So how do we communicate the effect of this study? Here, this is a massively important graph. When you start having, if you have anybody who wants to geek out and challenge you. Now, first of all, if anybody ever wants to challenge you, always validate them first. I understand how you feel. Have you ever heard of feel, felt, found? You ever heard that before? Feel, felt, found. Here's 1 cat, 2 cat, 3 cat. All right, feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. I felt the same way. But once I experienced, I found that it actually worked. Feel, felt, found. Feel, felt, found gets you on the same side as somebody else. So it's when somebody's wanting to step in conflict with you or challenge you, they're going to say, this doesn't work, it can't work, this is bullcrap. I just say, I understand exactly how you feel. I felt the same way. But once I saw the science and tried it for myself, I found out that this thing is actually for real. Let me show to you what I found. A couple things about this graphic here. All of these right here are 1-year studies. These are the results of 1-year studies. Their effect on the development of bone density is shown through a DEXA scan. They were all done on postmenopausal women with the goal of trying to find out what builds bone most effectively. It's called a meta-analysis study, and we never like Lancet or Journal of America, New England Journal of Medicine, and all these, whenever these big research outfits do a meta-analysis study, all researchers go, okay, yeah, that's real stuff. And they look at a meta-analysis study because they look at a lot of different studies of the best ones in a particular class to try to get as close to truth as possible. And so what they found was, if you're not doing anything, you're not taking supplements, you're having an active lifestyle, people were losing like 1% to 2%, 3% in some cases, but about 2% of bone density per year postmenopausal women. Then they started taking some supplements like vitamin D3 and calcium. In fact, if you just do supplements and nothing else, your rate of bone loss slows down, but it's still negative. But you're giving the body the nutrients it needs, like we discussed a little bit yesterday, and I'll talk about some more today. So then what happens if you start putting in some activity in here, along with the supplements? Does that improve your results? Well, we look at walking, nope, had no change. No change between walking and no activity. All they're taking is vitamin D3 and calcium. Okay, well, I do a vibe plate. I got one of those power plates at home. I'm building bone density. That's interesting because the study here shows it has no effect on bone density. Okay, if people are like, oh, I'm going to OsteoStrong, I think that vibe plate's really helping me. That's not why we do it. You guys know why we do the vibe plate? Have you been explained that yet? I know you know, but thank you for nodding. If anybody knew, have any confusion over why we do the vibe plate and OsteoStrong if it doesn't build bone? What's that?
Please explain.
I will gladly explain. Why do we do it then? If it doesn't build bone, like what's the purpose of this? I'm not in the business of wasting people's time. If this isn't really helping people build bone, then what the heck are we doing here? The reason why we do it is this. All right, so before a sprinter goes and starts their race, they're jumping around, they're doing their thing, right? What are they doing? They're activating their central nervous system. It will perform better once it's lit up and ready to go. All right, it's called warm up, right? And then they hit the ground and take off running and they get a better result. When you stand on a vibe plate and it's vibrating at 30 whatevers per second, you're going to activate the muscle fiber. You're going to create instability so that your central nervous system is trying to catch up. We don't do more than 30 because if you start doing too many, you'll put the muscle into tenderness, which means the muscle just locks, and then you're not getting the effect. So you slow it down a little bit because the temptation is like, well, 30 is good, then I'll just crank it up and I'll get a better result. Nope. You want to keep it just enough to where the muscle's unstable and it's jiggling. We have them stand on one foot. We have to do different things and move around while the muscles are unstable because we're just trying to activate the central nervous system so that when you do that, you will get a better result. Now, what do I mean by better result? Is that you will hit a higher level of force typically if you warm up your muscles ahead of time. And then they're not really even warm. Like an athlete is really trying to get blood flow and warm them up to prevent injury. All we're trying to really do is warm up your central nervous system so that it functions better. Does that make sense? Okay, that's why you do it before you get on the devices. What about after you get off the devices? Why would we do it then? Okay, I understand that makes sense, Kyle. I'm tracking with you. But if you're doing it to do a central nervous system warm up, then you do a session. Why on earth would you do it afterwards? There's no point in warming up then, and you already told me that the dang thing doesn't build bone density. Why am I wasting my time on this thing? Anybody know the answer to that? Jonas knows? Good. I was thinking, if this guy didn't knock down his head here, I'm sure some of the more experienced people do. The reason why you do it afterwards was actually inspired by a guy by the name of Dr. Raj Singh. Dr. Raj Singh is a neurologist that helps people who've had strokes or other brain injuries rehab after they've had this thing happen to them, a stroke or anything like that. And he was actually cited in Dr. Jacobs' original book called Osteogenic Loading. And one of the things he said was quite interesting. First he said, I don't think a human being is ever the same after they do one session. It's such a powerful stimulus because I don't think anybody can ever go back to what they were. It actually, one session will change you permanently forever. And he was told to fire at the same time. Your central nervous system is completely lit up, and it's your body and your nervous system is completely lit up. So any type of movement that I do afterwards is just going to teach my muscles to work better. The reason why we do the biplane afterwards is to reinforce and strengthen new neural pathways that have been lit up. That's why we do it. Before, you're warming up your central nervous system, getting it ready to try really hard for 60 seconds. Afterwards is to train the muscle fibers because they're open and ready to be trained. Does that make sense? It's super cool. In fact, you can have somebody who's an athlete, let's say a golfer, or Jimmy referenced baseball, or maybe I did home runs, right? So we do baseball. So we'll have somebody who's a golfer come in. After they do the session, we'll have like those little practice swinging golf deals that are like this long, or a club, and they'll just sit here and they'll just freaking do swings over and over again. They're laying down and strengthening those neural pathways. Now, what's interesting about lifting weights, and let's say, for instance, I'm doing a bicep curl, okay? Even though I'm like doing X3 bar and I'm doing a big band, I'm gonna get fatigued after a certain number. Am I engaging all my muscle fibers when I do that? Yes, no, no. Why not? Anybody know why?
It's limited in a special area.
Nope. When I do a chest press, I'm limiting a special area. I think I know what you're trying to say. So let me help you out here because sometimes English, you speak beautiful English, but sometimes the words aren't quite there. I get it. So when I'm doing a curl, my muscle is changing its size and configuration as I do that. And as it's moving through a contraction, I can't engage every muscle fiber at the same time. Additionally, because I started out low and I'm working out high, I can't use an amount of weight that can get me into a maximum amount of force. Even though I may be doing a really hard curl, I'm still not doing my max because I had to lift it up. The reason why we lock you in position is so that you don't have to lift a weight to get to your maximum force production. We're putting you in your strongest range of motion so that you could just start imposing the maximum range of motion, and you never have to let it down so you don't injure yourself. You're never having to move the weight through space, and as a result, you have the opportunity to engage every muscle fiber at the same time, and it lightens up your nervous system, and it's ready to go. That's why afterwards you want to do something to lay down new neural pathways so that you have better balance and agility, and the muscles will work better later. Does that make sense? Okay, so here we are. We're doing all this stuff. That was me rabbit trailing. That's what we call it in the United States. You can go down a little rabbit trail. I talked about that weight bearing exercise. I'm actually glad this guy did this one. This guy who did this study, does weight bearing exercise build bone, and it did. That's freaking awesome. And it supports Wolff's Law. But the guy in the study, it was about 1% in 1 year of full-on weight training. All right? And the lead researcher said he really just wanted to prove that it was possible to build bone, so it supports what it is that we do. But even he said in the comments of the study, he said, it's not really practical for people to do. It was a highly controlled environment. They had to have trainers there helping people do this. They had high subject dropout rate from the study because lifting heavy weights is it's dangerous, it's hard, it makes people sore, they don't want to do it, blah, blah, blah. And so he's like, yeah, we got the result to prove that it worked. Not really practical, but yes, you can do it. And so, happy he did it. Doesn't really work. Then you have over here the #1 class of prescribed drugs in osteoporosis are what's called bisphosphonates. That you ought to know. Bisphosphonate. And there's a lot of different ones. You'll hear Bonea, Boniva, Reclass, and I don't know all the names of one, Prolia. There's different ones out there. But essentially they work the same way. A bisphosphonate drug You have two types of cells in your bone. You need to know this. You have that build or break down bone. Yep. Pardon me?
One of the is the breaker.
What are the what?
Like this, yeah.
Because when Tammy was explaining it, she called it the breaker and some people didn't know what it was.
Okay. So you've got two different types of cells. You have a type of cells that builds up and makes new bone. Those are called osteoblasts. Then you have a type of cell that breaks down the bone. Those are called osteoclasts. You have both of them all the time, all right? And each of them serve a function. It's called bone remodeling. In fact, about every 7 years, you know what we did? A brand new skeletal system. Every 7 years. Isn't that amazing? In fact, your cells are constantly, that's one of the slowest ones in your body that turns over, but you get all your other cells and organs that are turning over regular, but bones, about 7 years. And the way a bisphosphonate drug works is it kills those pesky osteoclast cells. Okay? Causes cell death of the osteoclast cells. So those are the cells that are breaking down your bones. So the doctors are sitting around going, or the researchers or the pharmaceutical companies are like, okay, if osteoblasts are making bone and osteoclasts are breaking down bone, well, let's just get rid of the osteoclast cells. I don't give a crap what they do in the body, if they serve a function or if it's healthy for people. Who cares about that? We want to sell more drugs. Let's just kill off the osteoclast cells. What could possibly go wrong? Okay, and that is the function of a bisphosphonate drug. All right. Now, the problem is, as Jimmy was stating earlier on, is that our bones, think of them, they do a number of things. They hold us up, they support our muscles, allow us to lift things and do work and all this kind of stuff, but they also perform another function. They perform a lot of functions, but one of them is they are a battery. They're a battery that holds calcium. And calcium is arguably one of the most important minerals in your body. Your heart doesn't beat without calcium. You can't blink your eyes without calcium. You can't think without calcium. Calcium is one of the most important minerals in your body. And guess what? Sometimes your body needs more calcium than you have available swimming around in your bloodstream. So where does it get it from? Your bones. How does it get it from your bones? Your osteoclasts. You kill your osteoclasts, not really getting all the calcium you might need when you need it. And who knows when you need it? Your central nervous system. It knows when you need it. And so if you start taking bisphosphonate, that's one of the things that happens. There's also some very interesting side effects to bisphosphonates that are kind of scary. In fact, you're not supposed to take a bisphosphonate for more than 4 years because the side effects become too dangerous. What are some of those side effects? Well, one of them is a spiral fracture in your femur. So it's when you're basically a spiral fracture, it's kind of what it says, it breaks all over the place. It shatters your bone. You don't break the bone, it now shatters, right? It's a bad day. That can happen. What's that?
The fractures, when they happen, are much worse
Yeah.
than the normal.
Oh, they're much, much worse. This guy probably knows about the next one. Pedro, what is the other problem that can happen from bisphosphonate when it relates to dental work?
Osteonecrosis.
Osteonecrosis. I knew he knew. It's basically the death of your jaw. And if you really want to be grossed out, go on to Google and look up some images of osteonecrosis. Yeah, you don't want to look at it. It's horrible. And dentists and orthopedic oral surgeons, they hate it because the material's dying here. They've got to put in prosthetic teeth or dentures, or there's nothing for them to drill into the bone. It's horrid.
It's very painful.
Yeah, it's painful. It's nasty. And there's other problems with it. I ran into a woman one time who had been taking bisphosphonate drugs for 11 years. I said, I didn't want to scare her, right? So I'm like, well, that's interesting. Does your doctor aware that you're not supposed to be taking that type of drug for more than 4 years? You should probably consider stopping that and talking to him about it. If not, I can provide you some information that you can bring to him. I'm happy to help. And she says, no, that's okay. We just change prescriptions every 4 years. It's still bisphosphonate, still do the same damn thing. Horrible. Okay. bone anabolics. The bone anabolics, there's one on the market. It's called Forteo. It's manufactured by a company called Eli Lilly. And it is, you see right here, it is the most effective bone building drug in the world. It's a bone anabolic. It's like a steroid for your bones. How cool is that? You want strong bones? Take the steroid. High five. Got one kind of annoying side effect. Bone cancer. But that, aside from that, look at these results. Now, everybody knows that. No one likes bone cancer. Yeah, spiral fracture won't kill you. Osteonecrosis, it's bad, but you don't see it that often. But the whole cancer thing, yeah, that kind of makes people feel pretty bad. So they only prescribe this bone when fracture is imminent because their osteoporosis is so bad. They got like a negative 4.5 T-score. Like, crap, we gotta do something to help this person. They're gonna fracture. And so it's only used in extreme situations. It does work. And if you don't get bone cancer, high five, you build a lot of bone. And then you have over here on the right side, just minding its own little business, OsteoStrong. How cool is that? Now, all of these right here are part of like 152 different studies or something like that, these meta-analyses. OsteoStrong wasn't a part of that study. It was too small of a study at the time. Basil and John did the best they could with the funding they had, but the results were extraordinary. 14.7% bone density increase on average across all subjects in the study. All were post-menopausal women. And unlike all of these were 1-year studies, 6-month study. Half the time, more than double the results of the most powerful and cancer-causing drug in the world as it relates to building bone. Half the time, double the results. Half the time, double the results. That's an important power statement. I understand you want to get results. Why are you here? I'm concerned about my bone health. I'm so glad you came in. We specialize that because the solution we provide compared to everything else you see here delivers double the results in half the time. I found. Double the results in half the time. Got it? Does that interest you? Yeah, but I got a vibe plate at home. I'm so glad you have a vibe plate. Vibe plate is great for endocrine and they can stimulate your nerves and they can improve balance, but listen, I know you want results. I care about you. And I understand how you feel. A lot of people feel that way, but we also found when we looked at the studies that the whole body vibration really didn't quite deliver the results you want. We do have vibe plates here, but we use them for entirely different reasons. I'll explain later when I take you through the session. Okay? You guys know this one. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. This was really cool. This is not a published study. This is kind of an internal case report analysis that John did. I don't know if you were involved with this, Basil, or not, but what John did was he simply looked at the data in our devices over 4 years of data with an average age of 52. Outside of OsteoStrong or people really performing or seeking athletic performance in the gym, you don't really see 52-year-olds getting stronger. If anything, a 52-year-old is just trying to hold on to what they got. We're just desperate. Oh my gosh, I don't want to get any weaker every damn year, right? We see the writing on the wall. I'm 54 now. After 1 year, these 500 people with an average age of 52 saw a 73% increase in how much force they could generate on that device. Over 4 years, a 290% increase in how much force they could generate. Ladies and gentlemen, in the history of everything athletic performance related, has there ever been anything that's even come remotely close to doing that? Who wants more of that action? Everybody does. All right?
You're talking about 50-year-old, but I love the 95-year-old.
Yeah, it applies to everybody. This was just the data set here. This applies, thank you for pointing that out. This works for everybody. This was just the data that was in the system that was pulled. Okay, it doesn't mean, well, I'm 50, yeah, will I have those same results? I'm 80, will I have those same results? I'm 15, will I have the same results? Yes, 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 and yes. Okay.
They don't need to do
Massive.
anything else.
What's that?
They don't need to do anything else.
That's a great question. Karen asked a question here. Karen, right? All right. We get this question a lot. So, are you saying if I join OsteoStrong, I don't need to do anything else? No. I'm not going to say you don't need to do anything else. I'm going to say, look, here's what understand what OsteoStrong does. OsteoStrong can radically improve your bone density. It can radically improve your physical strength. It can eliminate most types of joint and back pain. I don't care if it's in your ankles, knees, hips, lower back, upper back, middle back, shoulder, elbow, whatever. It can eliminate most types of joint and back pain pretty quickly as well. It can improve balance, and it can improve it can improve posture. Okay, that's what OsteoStrong does. Are there other health benefits to doing other types of exercise should you want to do something else? Absolutely. You know what OsteoStrong doesn't do? It doesn't do anything for your cardiovascular health. And while it will help with some endocrine function, if you're doing resistance training, you're going to see an improvement in your endocrine system, which is your hormones. You do have better hormonal output of human growth hormone and increases in testosterone and things like this by working out. So I'm not saying this is a replacement for working out. If you want to do both, high five. I'm going to support you in that effort all day long. But truth be known, when we look at the statistics out across society, most people don't work out. So if I were going to do one thing, and only one thing, and I know I'm lazy and I might, you know, how many times in your life have most people decided they want to start working out and they were all excited, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get in shape, I'm going to be a badass, I'm going to do something about this belly, and they go work out and 30 days later they're like, screw that, right? That's most human beings. I'll explain the reason for that in just a moment, but one of the secret powers of OsteoStrong is that this is something that people will do. We see 90 to 100% of the people coming in every week to do their session. If they're not there, it's either they're sick or they're traveling or some life event happened that they had to handle. Otherwise, they're there. That's amazing. So, yes, I want you to work out. Yes, I want you to eat healthier. Yes, 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 yes. There's all these things you can do to improve your health. But if I had to choose just one thing to do that's going to have the maximum amount of result for the least amount of effort, that. Now, if you need help because you want to do more, some people just want a better result faster, I'll help you with that. I'll try to advise you and counsel you. And some of you have knowledge to help people in other areas. And by all means, inspire to do anything you want. But the question is this all you have to do? Well, you don't even have to do that. You can do nothing. You can be this guy. You could be, well, let's go back there, you. You could be this person. You don't have to do anything. No judgment. I'm not a judge. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I make no judgment upon you. However, if you want to be this guy, or this guy, which I'm going to explain now, why not do the thing that delivers those best results? That's why OsteoStrong. Now, if you have a limited budget and you're trying to save time, or you know you may stay committed, yeah, OsteoStrong. If this is too expensive for you, maybe we can work something out. Or if you just would rather, you know, I love going to the gym, I'd rather go to the gym, it means I can only afford one, then go to the gym, all right? But know what you're walking away from, all right? This one is really cool. This is one, was this your idea or James's idea to do this study? This is a good study. It's a really good study. So A1C, does everybody know what A1C or HbA1c is? You should probably know this one. You don't get really asked about it that much, but this is something you should probably know. A1C or HbA1c is a long-term blood glucose marker that gets tested frequently for people who are diabetic or used in diabetic studies. It will tell you how your blood glucose levels are over a 3-month period of time. It turns over every few months. Why is that important? Because if I were to put on a continuous glucose rate monitor, which you can get those now, which are super cool, you can see that your glucose is doing this shit all the time. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. I ate a potato chip, boom. I fasted, it goes down. You know, and then there's all kinds of things you can do to manipulate your blood glucose. But you can even think about food and cause your blood glucose. You know that? It's true. So what do they do in those days? Well, they have to look at A1C because that is the long-term blood glucose marker over a 3-month period of time. It will tell you kind of generally how your blood glucose is on average over 3 months. So they look at the blood glucose marker A1C, and that's what we did here. I say we, Dr. Bigwish and Basil Hunt here. They looked at blood glucose markers on pre-type 2 diabetics. Now, pre-type 2 diabetics, the reason why I saw pre doesn't mean you're going to get it. I mean, you can stop there, but we just use that for the sake of this conversation. A pre-type 2 diabetic is someone whose A1C is beneath being a type 2 diabetic, but kind of borderline, right? And the reason why is because they're not taking any medication for it. And what they said is, we don't want you to do anything else. However you live your life, continue to live it. Eat the way you eat, exercise or don't exercise, whatever you currently do, don't change it. Just add this to your lifestyle. Let's see what happens over the next 3 months. And from my understanding, they were pretty happy. Like, great, I don't have to do anything different. That's what I wanted to do. Nothing. Let's see if we can get a result here. Well, we looked at the decreases in A1C and compared it to cardiovascular training, metformin, which is a medication that's used to mitigate or reduce glucose levels, weight-bearing exercise, restricted calorie diet. And what outperformed everything in reducing A1C? OsteoStrong. It's massive because A1C is an indication that you have higher blood glucose levels. Higher blood glucose levels are a source of massive inflammation, sticky, gooey blood, and all these things, and it leads to arguably a lot of disease, cancer, dementia, weight gain, all these kinds of things are happening when you have excess inflammation. If you can reduce someone's A1C, you've likely extended their life more than anything that they're going to be doing. It is massive. And considering that the rates of type 2 diabetes and all this stuff has been going up a lot, this is huge. And I don't know what it was over here in Europe. In the United States, during the lockdown in the 2 years, like the person gained on average 35 pounds.
What?
Oh shit, yeah. The long-term negative health effects of what was done on these lockdowns far outweighs any damn thing that COVID caused in terms of death. I could make this argument with statistics and facts all day. I could give like a 2-hour presentation on that subject alone. The lockdowns killed us as a society. And we saw a 35-pound increase. If you don't think we're going to start seeing more of everything because of that, you don't know what weight gain does to the human body. However, if they come to OsteoStrong, we can reduce their A1C, we can re-establish their metabolic rate, their metabolism. We can do metabolic reconditioning, make them stronger, improve their bone health, and get rid of their joint and back pain. It is one of the most effective things that a human being can do, in my opinion.
Can you be a little bit more specific how OsteoStrong does this regarding the...
Yes, I can. Stand up. Let's take a quick break. Y'all jump down a little bit. My machine starts to... No, I don't know. All right. Woo! Stretch a little bit. All right. Robert said he was going to sing a song. Robert, what's the song you're going to sing? He left. Oh, he knew I was going to come on. All right, go.
I'm here. I'm thinking.
All right. Take a deep breath. Oh, here we go. All right, Jonas, come over here. All right, turn around. All right, pick an exercise. We're going to do 10 of them. What's it going to be? Just do this squatty thing. All right, that's it. 1, 2, 3,
All the way down, guys.
4, 5, 6,
That's the rest.
7, 8, 9, 10, and thank you, sir. If you guys stay awake, we might be able to convince Joe to do some pressure from the shirt off. For those of you who fall asleep, well, you're going to miss that one. All right, thank you, sir. How in the world does OsteoStrong cause somebody to lower their A1C, reduce glucose, and all the things? That's a great question. We get asked it all the time. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so when you do a session of OsteoStrong, you're getting really stronger. As Victor, me, and anybody else who does it regularly, we can also tell you it doesn't make your muscles bigger. It's stronger, but not bigger. That's kind of weird because in the fitnessy world, we're all used to, you work out, your muscles are getting bigger. How could you be getting stronger but not bigger muscles? How is that just, I don't even understand it. So, Dr. Chambers was sitting around brooding one day. How do we prove this? Maybe we could convince somebody to allow us to biopsy their muscle so we could see if the holy grail of athletic performance is actually happening. And what is that? The holy grail of athletic performance is this crazy term called myofibril hypertrophy. Try to say that 5 times fast. And if you can, take 3 drinks and you'll do it perfectly. Myofibril hypertrophy. I don't know the trick to that. Myofibril hypertrophy. This essentially means the development or increase of the density of the muscle cells. Okay? That is almost freaking impossible to do in any type of athletes unless you are a power lifter. Like power lifters can do myofibril hypertrophy, but they got to do a crap ton of weight. And I have a theory on how that happens. It's an unproven theory, I believe. But in order to achieve that holy grail, because if you can cause your muscle fibers to become more dense, your athletic performance goes through the roof. It's very hard to do. The way I think that it happens is similar to why you're able to increase bone density. Similar. You have to be able, when you're building bone density, you have to hit a certain amount of force to trigger your brain to start building bone. When you're building muscle density, when you're lifting weights, that's not creating myofibril hypertrophy. The reason why your muscles are getting bigger by lifting weights is because you're draining the energy stores of your muscles. Okay? So think of a muscle cell, just for the sake of this conversation. Let's pretend it's a circular deal. This is a happy little muscle cell. And inside the muscle cell, there's 3 kinds of fluid. We call that fluid collectively sarcoplasm. I'm not going to get into the deal, I don't want to confuse anybody. And when you work out your muscle cells, that sarcoplasm, those are actually different types of energy that your muscle will use to do work. And when you're fatigued, you've used up all the energy in your muscle cell. And I'm fatigued, I'm tired. And so what does your brain do? It goes, you know what? Let's make the muscle cell a little bit bigger so it can hold more sarcoplasmic fluid, hold more energy so it can do more work. Okay? And so the muscle cell gets a little bit bigger, and you got that pump, and you do the workouts and different types. Jake Wish knows all about that. When you see Jake Wish in all of his glory, he has trained his body to hold, so his muscle cells are holding a lot of sarcoplasmic fluid, but he's not developing density of muscle tissue. He continually fatigues his muscle in a very specific way that trains his brain to make the muscle cells bigger so it can hold more sarcoplasmic fluid, but it's not creating density of muscle tissue. But as he sat here and pondered and brooded, and how do I get somebody to allow me to biopsy their muscles so I can prove that we're creating more dense muscle fibers? Well, hey, can I cut into your muscle and take a chunk of it? Couldn't find anybody to volunteer. I know, because I'd have to take a chunk out of here and then give you OsteoStrong for a few months, and then I'm going to take a chunk out of your other muscle or right next to the other one and see if it got more dense. Sounds like fun? It would really help me out, and if you know 10 friends that'd be willing to do it too, that'd be great. So people aren't really keen to allowing somebody to cut into their muscle and take out a chunk of muscle. We couldn't find anybody to do that. What else could we do to see whether or not muscle density was actually going up? Because it's hard to prove. Yeah, you're getting stronger. That's causation, but that's correlation, that's not causation. Meaning, yes, you're getting stronger when you're doing OsteoStrong session. It's a theory that you're actually creating myofibril hypertrophy or making the muscles more dense, but that's not proof. The closest thing we could do to come with proof was that study, because you're adding more insulin receptors as you're developing your new muscles, the density of your muscle tissue. More insulin receptors, meaning that you could keep your glucose levels lower. This proves myofibril hypertrophy, because as you're making muscle cells more dense, creating new muscle tissue. In essence, you're adding more insulin receptors. The reason why people get type 2 diabetes is because their insulin receptors, so when you eat something that has carbs or glucose or whatever, your glucose spikes, it gets in your bloodstream, your pancreas goes, what the hell are you doing? It releases insulin. The insulin goes and grabs hold of the glucose and it pushes it into your muscle cells. And so your muscle cells are kind of waiting around, yeah, we like glucose, and here comes along a molecule of insulin attached to a glucose molecule, and your muscle goes, hey, we could use that, and it pulls it into your muscle cell. So your body is trying to get glucose out of your bloodstream and get into your muscle cells because it gums up your blood. It actually makes your blood sticky when you have glucose in it. It's really bad for you. It causes inflammation, all kinds of other issues, and it does a really good job of feeding cancer. So your body wants that crap out of your blood. So it releases insulin out of your pancreas, insulin attaches to glucose, your muscle cells are covered in insulin receptors, it grabs that glucose and says, yummy, 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 I'll hold it because muscle likes that energy. The problem is when we eat like crap continually for a long period of time, a lot of glucose and all that stuff, we start to wear out our insulin receptors. They do get worn out and they start to dysfunction. They start having a dysfunction where they just don't work so well. It's called insulin resistance. And so the glucose stays in your bloodstream longer, you get sicker, people are type 2 diabetic, you start having all kinds of problems and amputations. It's a bad day. And it's really hard to add new insulin receptors unless OsteoStrong. So OsteoStrong will help you develop density of muscle tissue, adding more insulin receptors. If you lose weight, it will stay off longer because we have reestablished, reconditioned your metabolism. Okay? When you do have those things where you go, oh crap, I need to go eat some, cookies or whatever your thing is. Okay, fine, I'll do that every once in a while, right? Great, go do it, but your body's ability to mitigate that's a lot better because now you have more insulin receptors because you develop the density of your muscle cells. Does that answer your question? Does everybody else understand that? Did I go too fast? Super cool? That's massive. 3 studies going on right now. One in the United States, Duquesne University, one in Sweden, led by Malin Nielsen, Dr. Malin Nielsen, our lovely talented doctor up there, and the study in Greek, Dr. Chorosos. Is that how you pronounce his name? Chorosos. It's so pretty when you say it.
Yeah, I have a question. If you're adding density to the bone and to the muscles, they will become heavier, right?
They will what?
Become heavier.
Yes.
So we need to tell our clients that they may
It's
gain
de
weight.
minimis. It's not really that much weight. No.
Not that much?
No. You'll lose more body fat than you will gain weight. You will have, your weight gain is really low. So worry about that. So these studies are awesome. So Basil Hunt and Dr. Jaquish, they didn't have a lot of money. They're just trying to get stuff out. So their studies just didn't have that many subjects. They did the best they could with what they had. They went to, we have a way of, Jimmy has this, whoever says, they went to war with the army they had, not the army they wanted. And we love them for that. But we didn't have the money at the time to do a more extensive study. And then years goes on, we funded more studies. And there's 3 studies that are completing now. And they cost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. The 2 that I'm super excited about are these 2, the Swedish study and the Greek study. The Greek study is done. High five. I'm going to go ahead and define done. That's what I say, all right? All the research is done. The data has been gathered. There's one step remaining, and it's called peer-reviewed. So when you hear people say peer-reviewed research, what does that mean? It means that a group of researchers do a study, and then they go circulate it around among other researchers. They review it to make sure that was this done right? What is this ethical? Did they actually prove what they sought to prove, or was it biased? And so they other researchers peer reviewed. That process could take 1 to 18 months. But Dr. Crusos. Damn. He's like one of the top 250 most cited researchers in the world. He's like a real dude. And we are honored and flattered that he did the study in Greece. And so his is probably going to go much more quickly through the peer review process. He's not like some PhD student trying to do his thesis. And like, who cares about those guys? They're just some punk trying to get their PhD, right? Not, well, they're getting a PhD, it's getting some respect. But this guy is world renowned. He's a real dude, so he's probably got other people tripping over them to review this, so we expect it to be done. And he's coming to the United States in June, to give a presentation on this study. He's very excited about it, and the preliminary abstract I looked at, we're very excited about it too. We can't discuss it, we can't discuss the exact results, it's an ethics thing, so it needs to be published before we can make a big deal out of it, but we're super excited. And they were looking at a lot more stuff than just bone density and A1C. They were looking at several different things that we know that we affect, and this paper is going to be amazing, and it's super big deal. The Swedish study is very similar, and it's a cool thing is you have two studies going on at the same time that I have confidence they're going to show basically the same results in the areas that they're looking at. So two different parts of the world, two different studies, going to see similar results. It's going to give us massive scientific efficacy. Nobody will be able to argue with you after those two studies are done. In this one study in Greece, I think there's like 180 subjects altogether, something like that. So you have 80 or 90 people actually doing sessions, 80 or 90 control, doing nothing. What's that? What's that?
Control is, I think 45.
45? Whatever. There's a lot of people in the study, and same way with the one in Sweden. So the one in Duquesne is a smaller study. It's like 20 or 30 people in that study, and they were specifically looking at what would the effect on bone density, doing OsteoStrong, and taking melatonin. So the reason why is because melatonin is a great supplement. Like, it's freaking awesome. Your body makes melatonin. But melatonin is a fantastic antioxidant, helps you sleep, all things, but it also is helps your body make more osteoblasts. So they're doing, they have a control, they have people taking just melatonin, and they have people doing melatonin and OsteoStrong. So they want to see whether or not, I think they have OsteoStrong, well, whatever. Does melatonin help you get better results in that? And it probably should. Just like certain supplements will help you get better results.
What about Australia?
Australia study, so I have zero visibility into that study. He just finished that study too, I think.
No, it's still going.
What's that?
About halfway.
About halfway through? How many people in your study?
So ours is a feasibility study. So the target is 42, but we've got 25 in it at the moment. So we didn't have enough to start all at once because all our PhD students left the country. So we started with half a dozen, and we're adding in more as we go.
Some more information on that study,
Yeah.
what's being tested. Again, I'd like to see the protocols and how many and when you expect it to be done. Because I don't have any data. Like, I don't. These I've seen the protocols on each one of these, and again, like I said yesterday, I try to stay out of it. I don't seek them out. It's not cool. So I don't ever want to be considered that I was biasing the study. Okay.
Can I ask, so many things that they are researching, I'm just wondering, can we know what will be revealed more than just one density? Like, do we have any insight, like, is it physical therapy, or is it something with the job? Do we have any information on that?
Like what is being researched?
Yes, what would be revealed? I'm thinking what.
Well, I'll tell you, and I don't know specifically each study. I know collectively what they're looking at, whether balance, joint pain, strength, A1C, bone density. They're testing cortical and trabecular bone. Cortical is the outside layer of the bone. Trabecular is the inside. I don't know if all of them are doing all those things, but between all of them, all those things are being tested.
Range of motion.
What's that?
Range of motion.
Range of motion. Yeah, range of motion. You think, how is this actually increasing range of motion or flexibility? It does. It's weird.
I'm asking about this because I'd really like us to, hopefully collectively, or just, let me understand which professionals I can sort of prepare to get excited. So that's what I want to be doing right now, is contacting all the doctors in the different
So, and here's what's gonna happen, I don't wanna geek out on all this stuff too much. The studies are coming out, they're covering these things, they're large studies. We're gonna put a lot of money into PR, there's gonna be a lot of articles and stuff. I hired a public relations company, they cost a lot of money. They're gonna start getting me and or Jake, which are both of us, whatever, on TV, radio, writing more articles, this kind of stuff. When this comes out, it'll be hitting hard. It's a big deal. We're taking it very seriously. The other thing that we're doing, and one of the things I might have mentioned, I know Perry's working on getting their national health care based on results of the study to start paying for OsteoStrong. In the United States, I met with Dr. Frank Oplaka, whatever his name is, Dr. Frank. Dr. Frank is the guy that sits in front of our United States Congress and convinces them to use Medicare, which is our kind of our national healthcare system for older people. He's the guy that presents to Congress to say, okay, here's a new treatment for a new thing, and Medicare should be paying for it. And so we'll have the costs and all this kind of stuff. When I went and had dinner with that guy in January of last year, he was blown away by the stuff that I was telling him, but we didn't have sufficient studies, sufficient efficacy for him to go stand before Congress and say this works. That study, the Swedish study, those two studies together, and I'll try to get it done with just the Greek study, because that's the one that'll probably be coming through peer review first. We'll use that information to go stand before. If the United States government and their Medicare system starts covering, paying for OsteoStrong, other countries are going to do it, especially if Australia is doing it, it becomes a lot easier. It's kind of when one of the big countries starts doing this, everybody starts following kind of thing. We're a multi-billion-dollar company, and everybody better get to freaking work. Because our biggest job is going to be opening up centers as fast as we can. Because when you start paying for people who have OsteoStrong, the other thing is when I showed Dr. Frank this, without hesitation, he says Medicare is going to pay like $500-600 a month for people to go there, because the cost of the problem is so big. In the United States, there was a meta-analysis study that was published in Europe, annually spend between $5 and $6.5 trillion a year on the direct cost of osteoporotic fractures today. Actually, that was in 2018 dollars. That's a ridiculous amount of money. Because those healthcare systems are paying so much, $500 or $600 a month to send people to OsteoStrong is nothing. So it's going to change our company. Massive. Drugs. Osteoporosis, I talked about bisphosphonates, types of bisphosphonates. I don't know what you guys have over here. In the United States, we popular brands, Fosamax, Taxanol, Lonico, Reclass, Forteos, the bone anabolic I was telling you about. Type 2 diabetes. These are the most common medications, metformin. There's some other ones on here. I never really heard of these until I was pulling up on here. Metformin's a great medication. It's actually made out of like pharmaceutical grade French lilac. You can go buy French lilac and a lot of health food for it. This health food stores is great at mitigating glucose levels. In fact, they did an interesting study. They found that people who are type 2 diabetic, who are generally unhealthy, have metabolic dysfunction, have a lower chance of getting cancer than people because that are taking metformin. It's an anti-cancer drug because it keeps your glucose levels low. It reduces inflammation. There are people who are biohackers who are fit who take metformin. Biohacker. So different types of medications. These are actually things you need to make bone soup. Right? Stuff your body needs to make bone. Vitamin D3, vitamin K2, phosphorus, collagen, calcium, magnesium, and zinc. Those are everything that it needs. The main ones being D3, K2, and collagen and calcium. If you're getting those, you're doing pretty good. So, look at your pictures. All right. Anything else I want to cover on this? I get asked this question of how does OsteoStrong help with joint and back pain? This is not a sciencey thing. I want to get sorted. Explain it. So, all right. I personally suffered from decades of chronic joint and back pain. You don't know my story? I used to be a mixed martial arts fighter. It was quite good. But you get injuries. And some guy one day, who was a friend of mine, who was a former wrestler, decided to show me a move. And I thought he was just going to show it to me. I didn't know he was going to go, bring out his Thor hammer and crack me. So I wasn't prepared to defend myself. And so if you see professional wrestlers, not like the stuff you see on TV, but on the Olympics, they'll kind of get on top of another guy. They'll say 1, 2, 3, go, and they try to flip him over their back. That's the kind of wrestler he was. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like 19 or 20 years old. I'm on all fours, and I'm thinking he's going to show me the move. I didn't know that he was going to demonstrate it at level 10. And so I wasn't prepared to defend myself. I was an excellent fighter, but I knew all different types of martial arts. I was a mixed martial arts fighter. But this guy went full on when I wasn't even thinking of defending myself, and he slammed my head into the floor so hard that I went paralyzed for about a minute. And right from my C1 all the way down, I couldn't move. I just like, and I'm lying there like, oh shit, the guy just broke my neck. He didn't break my neck, but what he did give me was 20 years of chronic neck pain. And I had a big knot on the right side of my neck. I had to stop doing martial arts, which I had a massive passion for, because when I would go try to do it from thenceforth, I would get a headache, guaranteed. It's just like 8 hours later after it just tighten up, headache, and the headache would last for days. And I got a point where I couldn't do much of anything. Working out with weights gave me a headache. Going out and being in the sun and getting hot would give me a headache. Sitting down too long would give me a headache. Now I had some other related injuries from martial arts and things like that. And over the years, my knees started cracking more. My right hip would kind of pop it back into place. My little lower, my middle upper back, my right shoulder, my right elbow. I was like hit by a truck. I couldn't throw a ball with my oldest son Austin when he was in 5th grade. It hurt. I couldn't make that motion. I'm doing this. Throwing a football like that, it really sucks. And so that was my life. I did 5 or 6 sessions at OsteoStrong. All that was gone. No more headaches. My knees don't crack when I go up and down the stairs. My hip, I don't have to pop it back anymore. I can throw a ball. It's like I was touched by Jesus. Like, what happened? I mean, it was that dramatic. In fact, one of our first franchisee owners, he said, there hasn't been a healing like this on the planet since Jesus walked the earth. Because he was seeing all these things in the center. People have been suffering for decades who tried everything. I tried acupuncture, chiropractor, I went to massage all the time. I did not want to get surgery, but I actually considered it because I was desperate. I was afraid by the time I was 60, 65, I would have a heart attack and die. And I'm not a worry. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. We all die. I'm from Texas, whatever. You're gonna die someday. I'm not gonna worry about it. But it's gonna happen. So I was thinking in terms of getting my house in order and making sure my wife and kids had everything they need. I just started kind of like, yeah, I'm probably gonna be dead by the time I'm 60 or 65 because I was getting fatter. I couldn't do exercise. I'm just taking ibuprofen all the time, like 20 a week, just to mitigate the pain. It's only a matter of time before I'm going to start having to take harder drugs. And so it sorted me out. How does it work? I'll never forget the first time I did a session. I'll be honest with you, I was scared. I was scared because I'm going to be compressing my joints. I've got joint pain. That seems like a bad day. I probably shouldn't be doing that. There are chiropractors that have decompression therapy to decompress your joints, and it reduces or eliminates pain for a short period of time. These guys are decompressing joints. You're telling me, John, you want me to do this damn thing and compress my joints, or you're out here flipping mine? What the hell? We only live once. I'm from Texas. I'm here. There we go. 5 or 6 sessions later, I'm free. How does joint pain generally occur? You have two joints coming together and you're impinging a nerve. And that nerve's getting pinched, right? Because the joints come together. So as you get older, your cartilage wears is thinner, you get bone spurs, it grinds on a nerve, and it owie. You get an owie inside your joint, and that's no fun. When you do a compression, it's pushing the damn thing together. The first thing that happens is that once you press the joint, you'll have a natural decompression with fluid that will go in between the joint. Sometimes, and raise your hand if what I'm saying is true, you'll have people who have some level of chronic pain, and after their first session, they're like, oh my gosh, my knee or my hip or my back doesn't hurt. Have you ever experienced that before? Raise your hand if you've seen that. It's pretty freaking amazing. I remember my father, his knees hurt so bad when he rolls over in bed at night, it wakes him up. He did 1 session, 2 sessions, and his knee stopped hurting. We had an ex-professional hockey player from Canada come do a session at a Tony event. He was walking with a cane, had already had one hip replacement surgery, and he had another one scheduled. He does the lower GT over there, does a session, comes back 30 minutes later. He says, I want to show you something. He puts his cane down. He says, I've been walking up and down those stairs for the past 30 minutes, just in total disbelief. He's like, what in the shit just happened? Like, this is incredible. How do I get these in my house? That kind of stuff happened. Because you get instantaneously, you'll get a natural decompression where the joint will start to come apart just because it's filling with fluid. But that's not permanent. That's only gonna last a few days, maybe 4, and then the pain's gonna start coming back. And so you do another session, and that happens again, and that keeps happening. But that is always going to be a temporary solution. Like me going to a chiropractor, alleviating the joint impingement, getting me straight, and then a day or 2 later I'm in pain again, right? It's not permanent. But what ends up happening, because you're imposing force, because you're creating this myofibril hypertrophy and making the muscle strong, you're doing something else, you're also making ligaments and tendons stronger, and because you're developing all that tissue around the joint capsule, it starts to naturally rest apart. And it's keeping itself separated. One of the reasons why we get joint and back pain as we get older is that our muscles and our ligaments and tendons are getting weaker, and so it's not holding our joints in a natural decompression. We have the benefit of all this lovely, healthy cartilage when we're young, so we got that going for us too, but as the cartilage starts to get thinner and worn out from sports and other stuff you do, you need to have strong muscles, ligaments, and tendons around the joint capsule, and it will hold it naturally apart. And I'm standing before you at 54 years old today, a man with no joint and back pain. I almost never take ibuprofen anymore. My joints don't hurt when I go up and down the stairs. I can go play soccer on the beach. 54 years old. This was a guy, 10 years ago, I thought I would be facing death.
Are you still friends with the guy that fucked you up?
He's right here. Oh, that guy? Great question. No one ever found the body. Okay, now I understand. Yeah, you bet. No one ever found the body. Yeah, we. What goes that? By the way, yeah, go ahead. It's gonna be a joke.
Did Jesus ask for permission for that?
Jesus? No, I invited Jesus into my home. Yeah. He knocks at the door, so yeah, I guess so. 10 more minutes? Or you're just giving me 2 high fives? You're doing a great job.
Great job, keep going.
All right, so we'll take some questions. I think I've covered everything. Hey, if I missed anything before. And Jimmy, if I missed anything.
I think you're doing great, dude.
All right, Victor and Paulo.
We don't hear.
Yeah.
I'll repeat the question.
If people were going to the chiropractor to decompress, and they're asking us to recommend that they do that, what do you say about that?
So if they're going to the chiropractor to decompress, should they continue to go to the chiropractor? I'm not going to tell people what to do. First of all, yes, they can. It's not going to hurt their results. Okay. I love chiropractors.